Aloha, Buffalo. It's a little hard to keep the energy up today after that tough loss yesterday, but we're going to try. This is the I Love Buffalo podcast. My name is Josh Ketry, and I'll be your host. Today in the podcast, the lessons we can learn from Buffalo Bills' loss, why the coach in your head matters, and how growth mindset is the path from ordinary to extraordinary. All this and more on today's episode of the I Love Buffalo podcast.
Bruce Wayne, I'm alive in the nighttime. Take a left when you get to the right side. Take a sip, take a puff till you feel fine. Counting all the questions as a voice that's so divine. Turn down the lights when we drinking. I pay to know what you're thinking. Take a shot, but don't let it sink in. Got me feeling like life is the weekend. Yeah, let me swerve on them. 29, but I got 25 on it. You in line, but you ain't gonna go fun it.
Today's a sobering day in Buffalo. 32 teams every year in the NFL go in, and 31 end in a disappointing fashion. And we had to be one of those teams this year again. But that ending of the season, the way that feels, is different than it was 10 years ago because we get further and further and further in the playoffs. And the further you get, the more that tension rises. I'm grateful to feel this disappointed. For many years, we didn't even have a chance. We didn't care. The intense emotions that I feel right now comes from being vulnerable. Disappointment can only come from putting yourself out there. That's how it works. This is true with relationships. This is true with sports. It's true with businesses. It's true with even things like me talking on this podcast. Vulnerability requires courage because it always comes with the chance of disappointment, of failure. You have to put yourself out there and test yourself, and that always requires courage. So maybe in our lives, we're not vulnerable enough and we're too safe. When we're not used to experiencing tough losses like what the Bills just felt, it changes our whole mood. You can feel it everywhere in the city, and that's okay. You should feel disappointed. I feel disappointed. Everyone feels disappointed. But the question is, what should the coach in our head be telling us to try to overcome this loss? Should we just give up and say, poor me, it's all over? Or should we have a different attitude? And that attitude should be defined by what outcome that we want and what's the best way to get that outcome. So we're going to explore the idea of overcoming loss and why that's important and what that means, both in terms of the Buffalo Bills, but also in our individual lives. I'm lucky enough to have some awesome coaches around me. And after I experience a tough loss or go through a tough loss of my own or one of my students, I like to talk to other coaches and get different perspectives on how to deal with loss. I've been fortunate enough to train with many elite athletes and elite coaches and be around many champions. Buffalo United Martial Arts, we currently train under JT Torres. And JT Torres is won basically the Olympics of Jiu-Jitsu. It's called the ADCC. He won that twice. It happens every other year. He's also won like the World Championships of No-Gi. He won the Pan American Championships. There's been a lot of people like this in my life in my 25 years of jiu-jitsu. Roberto Abreu, Marcelo Garcia, Rafa Mendes, Caio Terra. You can have people like this do seminars at your school. You can train under the absolute best people in jiu-jitsu. And jiu-jitsu is different like this. You train with your heroes. You train with the elite people. They come to your school. You can feel what they feel like. You can spar with them. You can talk to them. You can get their mindset. This is like the equivalent of if you were taking basketball lessons from LeBron James or tennis lessons from Serena Williams or learning the cello from Yo-Yo Ma or something like that. This is different in jiu-jitsu where we get to train with the absolute best in the world and see what it takes to be number one in a one-on-one sport that has a lot of competition in it. And from that, you can extract a lot of interesting things. When these athletes have come to town, sometimes they stay at my house. And when they stay at my house, you get a real good insight into their mentality, how they eat, how they sleep, how often they stretch, how disciplined they are, how focused they are, where they work out. And it turns out there's a lot of similarities to the champions. But the first one I always go back to is the coach in their head. What does the coach in their head tell them? Is their coach in their head saying, poor me, I'm not good enough, I lost, stay down, you're a loser, you'll never be good enough? Or does the coach in their head tell them things like, learn from this, get back up, fix the mistakes, what can you do better? What are some things we can work on? How can we adjust? How close were we? What are things we should be focused on? I have never, and I mean never, met a champion who had the mindset of poor me. I've met plenty of champions that failed a whole bunch of times before they succeeded, but I've never met a champion that's mindset was just, poor me. But after a fourth consecutive loss to the same opponent, another tight game, it is hard to keep getting back up and keep getting punched in the face by the same person and keep getting knocked down and then trying to get back up again. So after this loss, I wanted to reach out to some of my friends that are coaches and get their opinions. So after the loss yesterday, I reached out to one of my good friends and someone who I consider one of my coaches, Coach DJ Gincola. He's up from Niagara Falls. He's a former high school wrestling head coach there. He has students in NCAA that have come out of his program in Niagara Falls that are awesome and elite level wrestlers, ranked wrestlers. DJ is also a master world champion in jiu-jitsu at Blue Belt. As a student at Buffalo United Martial Arts, his first year of wrestling, his record was 1 win and 21 losses. And then he gradually got better and got better and better. When he won the Master World bracket in the IBJJF, he had 44 guys from around the world in his bracket, and he came out as number 1, the best in the world. That is incredibly hard to do. The mindset needed to do that is elite. And after yesterday's loss, I wanted to get some of DJ's thoughts on what mentality you should have after a loss like that. And honestly, pretty soon after starting talking with him, our mentality shifted and it went to looking at athletes who had struggles before they were able to become champions. And it turns out there's quite a few athletes and coaches that went through some serious struggles before finally breaking through. And I just want to share a few of those with you. The first is Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls, of course. They faced the Detroit Pistons many times in the playoffs for 3 consecutive years, actually, before finally overcoming them. So that's one example. Another example is NFL coach Bill Cowher. He had years of playoff disappointments, including 4 AFC championship game losses. That was in 94, 95, 97, and 2001. Before he finally led the Pittsburgh Steelers to their first Super Bowl in 26 years. So that was like a ton of losses. It took his 14th year as a head coach to win, and then he finally won. Another really good example that Coach DJ and myself talked about was Andy Reid, the head coach of the Kansas City Chiefs. Go look at his history. He endured like 20 plus years of playoff frustrations. This included 5 NFC Championship game appearances with the Philadelphia Eagles before finally winning his first Super Bowl. So to put that in perspective, the Bills have gone to 2 of those so far under Sean McDermott. And then we came up with lots more examples we found. Messi in soccer, Keenan Cornelius and Leandro Lowe in BJJ, Andy Murray in the men's tennis versus Djokovic. Peyton Manning didn't get to like the championships till his 9th year. John Elway took 15 years. LeBron James took 9 years. Drew Brees took 9 years. There are a lot of examples you can cite of athletes and people having to struggle for a while before breaking through. Does that mean that we should just give up? That we should just blow up the team? That we should start over? I don't think so. This team is so close. We're talking a few plays away from being there. When you're this close, you only really lose if you don't get back up. But if you can get back up and do it again. Try to get closer. You're so close. You're doing so many things right. Of course, you can blame the refs. You can blame some players, have a few plays here and there. But try not to do that. Try to focus on where you can improve. Of course, individual players can improve. You got to focus on the results that you want. So what results do we want? We want to win the Super Bowl. If you're really, really, really close to winning the Super Bowl, should you start over and just scrap everything? Or should you try to fix a couple problems and get there? And let's not forget a few things. The Chiefs are historically good, like amazingly good. One of the best teams ever. The combination of Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes is ridiculous. The biggest loss that Mahomes has ever had, the worst season he's ever had, is losing the AFC Championship. That was the worst season he ever had. And that is just straight up incredible. To beat a historically good team like that, you need to be perfect. And we had a few tiny little errors, mistakes, or calls that didn't go our way. And it resulted in a 3-point loss twice. One loss in overtime and one considerable loss where we had a 9-point lead and we ended up losing that. So to me, the idea of blowing it up is just crazy. I hear a lot of people saying this, a lot of people calling for McDermott's job. I think it's ridiculous, honestly. But the important lesson here is, what should our mindset be? What should the coach in our head be saying? How do we approach that going forward? The coach in our head always has two choices when faced with adversity. The coach can say, poor me, I give up, or that coach can have a growth mindset. Growth mindset is an entire philosophy. We teach it at the kids' classes in jiu-jitsu, and the simplest way to explain it is this: the power of the word yet. You could tell a kid, I didn't win, or you can tell a kid, I didn't win yet. You can say, I didn't get an A in that class, or I didn't get an A in the class yet. It's a process and you're working towards the goal. There's going to be failure along the way, and you got to keep getting better. In essence, that's what the growth mindset is. So the people calling for Sean McDermott to be fired, I just strongly disagree with it. I remember the drought, 17 seasons, and what that felt like. And it felt like apathy. It felt like nothing, like you just didn't care. Yeah, it's way stressful right now in the playoffs. Every year they're in it, and you're like, all right, here's week 1 of super stress, week 2 of super stress. And it's not easy to go through that as a fan, as a Buffalonian, as an underdog. But when Sean McDermott came here, he brought with him growth mindset. I was super excited to see growth mindset in action when he brought it here. I had just been introduced to the concept after training jiu-jitsu for so long. Someone recommended some books about it, and I read about it. There's one specific book called Mindset by Carol Dweck, and this philosophy was eye-opening to me. And I saw a coach on TV of the Bills all of a sudden preaching it, talking about it. Trust the process. We're going to grow. He said the words growth mindset before. And I was like, wow, this is super interesting. I want to see how it works on our team that sucked and didn't make the playoffs for 17 years. And turns out it's worked really well. We've been in contention almost every year, no matter we're shuffling players around, pieces around. We made the playoffs with Tyrod Taylor as a quarterback. So that shows you the kind of coach that Sean McDermott is and that culture has on a team. Did we get there all the way yet? No. There's a lot of teams that didn't get there all the way yet. But there are not a lot of teams getting as close as the Buffalo Bills. Besides, who would you replace him with if you fired him? What other coaches are beating Reed and Mahomes in the playoffs? The Buffalo Bills give them the closest rivalry that exists, pretty much. And imagine if McDermott leaves the Bills and ends up being just like Andy Reid, and all of a sudden starts going to the Super Bowls on his own, which I think would happen. I think that he would leave and find a team and go there with. I think that he is just running into one of the best teams of all time, and we need to find a way to get around that. It is certainly possible. It is close, and you got to get back up. You get knocked down 4 times, you get up 5. That's the mindset we need to have going into next year. Of course, growth mindset isn't an infallible philosophy. However, it is the best way for ordinary people to become extraordinary. If you want to become great at something, learn what the growth mindset is, adapt it to your own way of being, the things you're trying to be great at, put it in your everyday life, and use it to grow. Don't be afraid to be vulnerable, to test yourself, to have that courage and put yourself out there. And if you fall, you got to get back up. You got to extract the lessons from the loss and have a short memory, put it past you, and look forward. That is the only way. I didn't learn about growth mindset until my mid-20s, and I wish I had learned about it a lot earlier because it would have saved me a lot of suffering, and I could have looked at losses as opportunities to grow instead of an assault on my ego. And it's a big change, a big mindset change once you get there. For our kids' classes, we try not to honor wins and losses that hard. If you honor the wins and losses very hard, they become attached to that, and it's hard to have growth mindset if you lose and you want to protect your ego. So instead of that, we honor courage, like the courage to go out there and compete and test yourself. We honor effort, like how much effort you're putting in, how much training you're doing. And we honor purposeful practice. We say things like, practice doesn't make perfect, perfect practice makes perfect. And we try to practice in the right environment that's going to simulate a competition, practice in a way that is going to be the most practical for you when it comes time to compete. On a side note, Jaden Daniels, the quarterback for the Washington Commanders, he uses virtual reality to simulate being a quarterback in the NFL, which I thought was super fascinating. That kind of practice is awesome. He plays it at 1.5 speed, so he has to read defenses and not get sacked and get the ball out of his hands really quickly in virtual reality. And by doing this, it's kind of like a flight simulator. It's very risky to go out and just play quarterback with these dudes that are giant, huge, muscular people try to smash you. So using virtual reality is the same thing with like flying a plane. You don't want to fly a plane with, 400 people in it if you've never flown a plane before. That's very risky. You want to simulate it. So using virtual reality is a great way to practice. And you could see a rookie got to the championship game. That was amazing. Like probably historically one of the best rookie seasons anyone's ever had at quarterback. I don't know all the stats there, but it sure seems like it to me. That was based on how he practiced. How he practiced translated to his success. And that's his words. You look into that, it's really cool. There's another saying that we say to kids' classes too, and adults. It's be humble in victory and gracious in defeat. Like don't let the highs be too high or the lows be too low because it will mess with the process and the learning. And it's hard to do that. It's hard to separate your emotions from that. And as a Bills fan, I know that. But we got knocked down 4 times. We got to get back up. We got 6 more rounds. It can go a lot differently in the next 6 rounds. Let's get back up and keep fighting. Another thing I noticed in the last few playoff games was how much emotions I was feeling as a person. And I tried purposely not to feel nervous or anxious. I would block out content and not think about the game until game day. But it didn't really work. As much as I tried to do this, when the fandom came that day of the actual game being on, I was pumped. I was amped. Like I was feeling it with everyone else. And I looked at that and thought, wow, like this fandom that I feel is so strong. So last night I went to Buffalo Riverworks and they had a wild Bills party there. It was awesome. There were so many people there with banners and signs and the energy was off the charts. And I tried to look at like, what is that I'm experiencing? What is that fandom that we're looking at? We are wildly enthusiastic about other people's success. So what does that mean? We're looking at other people, like rooting for them and investing a lot of energy into that. And I had this thought cross my mind. Like, what if we could harness that and feel that way for each other? Like my enthusiasm for you and your enthusiasm for me, rooting for our friends to start businesses and chase championships and, make money and start families and be vulnerable and do whatever it is they're dreaming about doing. If we could have that enthusiasm for each other, that would be something where we could lift each other up with. It would be amazing to find that in the real world somehow and apply it in a way that has tangible results in our lives. That fandom emotional thing is a powerful thing. It sucks you in. If you get close to it, it'll suck you in. Wouldn't it be awesome if we could harness that power of rooting for each other and have it apply in the real world somehow? So that was a thought that crossed my mind, and I think it's a pretty interesting thought. There has to be a way, right? There has to be a way to do that. Because when we root for each other, that's a powerful thing. It takes some of the fear away. It gives us more courage. There's a book by Brene Brown called The Power of Vulnerability. And in it, it teaches you a lot of valuable lessons. But in the book, when you have like friends and family and people around you supporting you, you feel a little less vulnerable. You feel supported. And recognizing that, I think, is an important lesson we can take from this game as well. Let's be fans for each other. Now that the season of football is over, let's be fans for each other out in the real world. As for how to approach the loss, we need to find ways to keep improving. Even though we keep trying, we got to keep looking. This was supposed to be like a rebuild year, right? We were a few close calls away from greatness, and we can use the lessons from this year to keep getting better. We have more cap space, we have draft picks, and we have free agency. And we can be looking for things like a game wrecker on defensive line or better secondary or adding some weapons for Josh Allen. There's a lot of things we can do to improve, and The coaching staff, you have to give them a little leeway. At least Brady, this is like his first AFC championship game. He was outcoached. Like he was outcoached, I believe, by Andy Reid. I don't think McDermott made as many mistakes. I thought he did a pretty good job in this one. Of course, he oversees everything and takes responsibility for everything. But his execution, his reviewing the play that touched the ground, I think still it was, well, I don't want to get into too much of that, right? I'm not going to hate on the refs or any one player. That's not helpful for going forward. We need to have the mindset of learning from the loss, and we cannot have the mindset of poor me or blaming the refs or blaming any one player. We just got to be better. And that's what a good coach would tell us to focus on. All right, in closing, I'd like to shout out a couple local businesses that we usually do here at the end of the I Love Buffalo podcast. And I want to shout out 2 other podcasters. I got to know both these guys this year. These are my 2 favorite podcasts in sports. If you want to listen to podcasts about the Bills, I would definitely check out both of them. So Joe Marino does the Locked On Bills podcast. His podcast is excellent, super analytical, honest. He became the #1 podcast on the whole Locked On network. He's a community builder, which I really respect. He builds communities. He has a Discord group. He stays in contact with so many people. That's hard to do, and he's built a beautiful community around him. That's awesome to see. Check out his podcast if you haven't already. It's a daily podcast. It's like 20 minutes or 30 minutes every day. It's great. And the next one I want to shout out is Sal Capaccio. I'm sure you've heard of him. He's a former football coach, a sideline reporter for the Bills and for WGR. He does Always Game Day in Buffalo and Sal's House podcast on YouTube. Be sure to check both those guys out. I actually look to them as ways to improve my own podcast. They're super informative. You're going to know what's going on with the Bills, how to deeply dive into the analytics to problem solving that exists behind putting teams together and winning championships. And as you all know, it's not easy. In closing, I just want to express gratitude. I'm grateful that Josh Allen is the QB of the Buffalo Bills, that we have many more years of at least trying to get there. I'm grateful that our coach has a growth mindset and shares that culture with the team. I'm grateful that the culture in Buffalo has changed from apathy to hard work, effort, dedication, and a culture of trying to win, trying to be the champion. And I look forward to seeing where this story goes. And mostly, I'm grateful to be part of a city that knows how to embrace an underdog mentality and get back up after we've been knocked down. In Buffalo this coming weekend, we got a few things going on I'd like to share with you. We got the Buffalo Auto Show. That's always fun. Got roller derby at Riverworks on Friday, the 31st. The New York Muskie Fishing Expo is down in Chautauqua Harbor Hotel on Chautauqua Lake. That is all weekend. If you want to get into muskie fishing, just go check that out. Walk around, talk to some of the bait makers and some of the people that go fishing for muskies in the area. It's a lot of fun. It's going to be a cold weekend, so what else are you doing? And on Friday, Savo Highway, I gave them a shout out last week. They're playing at Pearl Street, and there's no cover. So Pearl Street Grill and Brewery is where my office is. That's going to be on Friday after 9 o'clock, no cover. If you like powerful vocals and good guitaring, they're like Tedeschi and Trucks. In closing, Buffalo, here's a little clip from one of my favorite speakers. His name's Jocko Willink. He is a Navy SEAL, a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, and he tells us the attitude we need to have when something bad happens to us. Until next time, Buffalo, keep that underdog spirit. Keep your head up. We get knocked down 4 times, we get up 5. Here's Jocko.
One of my direct subordinates, one of my guys that worked for me, he would call me up or pull me aside with some major problem, some issue that was going on. And he'd say, boss, we got this and that and the other thing. And I'd look at him and I'd say, good. And finally, one day he was telling me about some issue that he was having, some problem. And he said, I already know what you're going to say. And I said, well, what am I going to say? He said, you're going to say good. He said, that's what you always say. When something is wrong and going bad, you always just look at me and say good. And I said, well, yeah, when things are going bad, there's going to be some good that's going to come from it. Didn't get the new high-speed gear we wanted? Good. Didn't get promoted? Good. More time to get better. Oh, mission got canceled? Good. We can focus on another one. Didn't get funded. Didn't get the job you wanted. Got injured. Sprained my ankle. Got tapped out? Good. Got beat? Good. You learned. unexpected problems, good. We have the opportunity to figure out a solution. That's it. When things are going bad, don't get all bummed out, don't get startled, don't get frustrated. If you can say the word good, guess what? It means you're still alive. It means you're still breathing. And if you're still breathing, well then hell, you still got some fight left in you. So get up, dust off, reload, recalibrate, re-engage, and go out on the attack.
Free audio post-production by alphonic.com.